The next section, and it comes under this heading of road problems, because one of the problems you inevitably have, which they thought that they had solved but they hadn't, is what do you do when you have a railway and a road crossing, in particular when one of those roads is designated as an A road, so it's a major road. Remember, this is before the days of motorways, and this was the Royston to Cambridge section of the A10. And as you can see, it is very clearly identified as the level crossing being a big problem, and yet Davidge states a serious obstruction is caused by the double level crossing at Foxton, but plans have been prepared for obviating this on the lines discussed in the section dealing with level crossings. That was in 1934. It's now 2020. We're still waiting for that plan to materialise. We then move on to a section which again we collectively have kind of forgotten, but it was one of the most important aspects of town planning and one of the most important restrictions as well. And this was all to do with ribbon development. So for any of you, if you go down roads like Huntingdon Road, Histon Road, Milton Road, Hills Road, Shelford Road, they are all examples of ribbon development that ultimately the government had to legislate for to get rid of, because ribbon development is basically where you just have lines and lines of houses feeding on to what should actually be a main arterial road into and out of a city. And so what we see in Davidge's diagram are suggestions on how to actually counteract that. We also get to something that was that I referred to back in the contents section, which is the map of the green open spaces and the proposed ring road around Cambridge. And now, I think mainly because of wartime restrictions, this actually never got built in full. I mean, various sections of it did get completed. So, for example, Perne Road, Mowbray Road is an example of that part of the ring road being built, but it was never actually completed. And it was only really in the 1970s that, after traffic had increased significantly, that we ended up with what is now the A14 and the M11. We now move on to the proposed centres of development. Now, one of the proposals here was the development on Garden City lines of a number of villages, and you can see the ones listed here. Not everyone was in favour of garden cities, and I've come across a couple of books which basically said, amongst other things, that the population density in the grand scheme of things was actually too low. And actually that was one of the problems that we would later find, in particular with some of the post-war development, in that the community facilities that you actually need to help a community really get rooted and grounded just did not have enough people to keep it going. And it was, strangely enough, and I only found this out when I did a tour, I think it was of All Saints in Cambridge, the old Victorian church that very nearly got demolished. It's a William Morris masterpiece inside. But it was the declining population densities, amongst other things, that basically meant that the numbers of people going to churches actually fell significantly. Nearly at the end, because I'm aware that it's been going on for quite some time. Open spaces, national, regional and local. Again, mentioned it earlier, and one of the great things here is that they mention a whole series of places across Cambridge where they're basically saying, don't build here, we need some local open spaces. And funnily enough, those local spaces are the places that people are using now to get their exercise during lockdown, one of which is Cherry Hinton Hall, and another one which is shown here is which they call the Cam Valley near Newnham Mill, which I will always call Sweeney Todd's, because that was the name of the restaurant that was opened there in the late 1980s and the early 1990s, and their portions were so big it was unreal. How they got away with all of that for so long, I have absolutely no idea. Anyway, I'm going to finish it here with this really interesting diagram, because one of the things that Davide recommends is revising the district boundaries. Now, his proposal in effect was to create a group of local authority areas that were basically a merging of a whole host of others. So he suggested that it should be Chesterton Rural District, which would basically surround and it otherwise expanded Cambridge Borough, Newmarket District to the east, which would cover Soham and Fordham, and also surround Newmarket Town, but not actually include Newmarket Town, and then to the south for the villages of Bassingbourn, Melbourne and Duxford, that would just be South Cambridgeshire. Now, what's actually happened since is that all of those, in the grand scheme of things, or near as damn it, because Soham is in, I think if I recall correctly, in East Cambridgeshire District Council, have gone to create, with the exception of the expanded Cambridge City, South Cambridgeshire District Council. Now, one of the ongoing debates now is what is the best form of governance for a city like Cambridge, because at the moment it's been a mess, and it continues to be a mess because, amongst other things, of the political polarisation, but also because of the large-scale changes in population, which is also now having an impact on the political balance, as South Cambridgeshire found out at the local elections in 2018. And so, but whether we will actually see a further revision in the next few years, I think it's very unlikely. Possibly in the middle part of the next decade, but at the moment we've just got to get through the current public health emergency, so stay safe out there.